the hell is he?
I don't know, but if he's gonna call these meetings, he better show up.
I got out of bed for this.
And then I got 10 minutes to get to work. If I'm late one more time because of that fucker.
Here he comes.
You guys, what's up?
What'd you do, go get laid?
Yeah, but I'll tell you about that later. Okay, you know that cabinet in my house my dad always keeps locked up and shit?
Yeah, the one
Never get into?
Yeah.
I got into it.
Holy shit.
Yeah.
Real?
Oh, of course it's real, man. What, my dad keeps a fake gun in the cabinet.
Why do you think it's locked?
Oh, of course it's locked. To keep me out.
Hasta la vista, baby.
Oh, you go, Arnold.
on,
give
stop
me a
it.
gun, give me a gun, give me a gun. What's up? Danny Glover, check this shit out.
This isn't funny.
Fuck yeah.
Man, imagine the kick on this fucker. Oh, man, that'd be nice.
Don't point it over there. There's
Hey, wait,
people.
Yeah, dude.
Hey, Grandma.
Dude, that ain't funny.
Hey, fuck you.
Don't point that at me.
Fuck you.
Don't point it at me. That thing's loaded. What the fuck do you think you're doing? Give me the gun.
Quit it! No! You killed him! You killed him!
Wasn't it?
You killed him!
Fuck!
You killed him! He's dead! No! No!
Youth killings and accidental deaths are only two aspects of an American crisis. At present, guns are the #1 killer of black males aged 15 to 24. In 1990, guns were the cause of death in 64% of the 23,000 homicides. As the nation struggles with what to do with guns, more lives are lost every day. It is an issue that is the trigger of a nation.
And some fist fights broke out between the 4 guys and the rest of the guests at the party. And eventually all the 4 guys got back in their car, but they just were sitting there and they wouldn't leave. And the owner of the house, the father of the girl whose party it was, asked him to leave many times, and all the guests asked him to leave, they wouldn't leave. And I walked up to the car at that time, to the driver's side window, and just, you know, told him to get out of there, just leave. And I guess either I didn't know he still had the gun or it didn't register or something. And while I was yelling at him, I was kind of bent over the driver's side window, and the driver who had fired the gun in the first place still had it and just stuck it out right in my stomach, chest area, and fired it at probably about 6 inches distance.
Yeah. This here is a Colt Anaconda 44 mag. That's a 6-shot. This one goes for about $400.
This is a military gun. This is the SKS. They're flooding the markets with this right now. This gun is probably about, right now if you buy 20 of them at a time, my cost is probably about $68 per rifle. And this is the type of rifle they're trying to ban.
Well, I went to an ambulance to the hospital, and that night they did exploratory surgery to see exactly what damage was done, and went in and checked all my organs and everything, and found out that there wasn't any damage to any of them, that the bullet, the path it took, just missed all my organs.
This here is a 25 auto, and that goes for about $30.
I was shot with a 25 caliber gun, which it's bigger than a 22, but I was told it has like twice the stopping power. And smaller caliber guns like that, you would think, at least my feelings before this incident were, you know, they're not as dangerous as bigger caliber guns. But just from the doctors and police and everybody that I talked to afterwards, they said smaller caliber guns can actually many times be more dangerous.
22s are probably one of your more dangerous ones that I think, other than your assault weapons and your street high weapons. The reason is because they will follow bone, or if they hit organs, they'll just be like a BB in a boxcar, and they'll just go bing, 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 and they'll nick everything, and you are in a lot of trouble. They'll nick bowel, they'll nick liver, they'll nick spleen, they'll go on over and chip some of the pelvis, and maybe exit out the leg.
It entered right here, kind of on an upwards angle, continue in probably just a little over an inch from my heart, then ricocheted all the way down here and is lodged down in my hip bone, down in here, so it traveled all this difference, all this ways here, ricocheting around. Luckily, it missed all my vital organs, which is really lucky.
A gun like this, if this was hot, and you picked this up on the street, this gun would probably go for about 40 bucks.
How much does it go for normally?
This gun goes for about 200 bucks.
Well, first of all, it's intelligent. I mean, if you're going to commit a crime, why would you use something other than a gun? If you were going to commit an act of violence, why would you use a knife?
We went to the bar in East Town. It was a Saturday night. We left about 12:30, and we were walking back to our cars, and these two guys jumped out of the bushes on the side of the parking lot and mugged us at gunpoint. And 3 weeks later, a woman was shot and killed in the same parking lot.
But so far, until recently, shall I say, the problem of guns and violence has been kept in the black communities and the Latino communities and other communities somewhat outside of the middle class mainstream. And as soon as the problem begins to manifest itself in middle class America, we will see something being done about it.
So they came from where?
Over there.
I heard a rustling in the bushes,
Yeah.
and two guys came running out, and they ran past us.
They like
One
ran
guy
around
ran
this
around.
car, and the one grabbed.
Well, one ran around to Carol, and the other one backed up and came back to me. So I remember he physically ran past me. Carol worked at a movie theater at the time, and they came up to us, and I thought maybe they were friends of hers. So I looked over at her to ask her, do you know these people? Because they hadn't pulled a gun out yet, they hadn't done anything. It looked like they recognized one of us. So I turned to look to ask her, and the look on her face was the most horrible thing I've ever seen. And I didn't know what she was looking at. It was just this terrifying stare of disbelievement. And I turned and I looked at the guy, and I felt cliche-ly cold hard steel on my neck, and the guy's standing there breathing in my ear.
Show me that how it was again.
It was right here, and I was looking at him like this.
Yeah.
This is probably a version of a gun that they'll probably be outlawing pretty soon, because there is no use for this gun other than target practicing or probably shooting somebody with it.
It was 3 weeks after our incident, and they were leaving the bar, and they came down here, and apparently, from what I understand through the newspapers and such, the two men came out from behind some parked cars over in this area, and came up to them and asked for their purse, and they didn't show that they had a gun at that time, and so they said no.
And I think that this is a case of the self-fulfilling prophecy. The gun lobbyists, backed by the arms manufacturers, have for years been telling us that we need weapons to protect ourselves. And today, most people can look at that and say, well, yes, we probably do. When they look at media accounts, whether in the electronic press or the printed press, one is struck by the increasing violence perpetrated by people who are carrying all manner of weapons.
almost any kind of firearm. Well, I would say almost, practically any firearm that's available to the general public can be used for hunting. I have friends that hunt with handguns. They hunt deer with handguns. I've hunted deer with handguns. I've hunted squirrels with handguns. I hunt with a semi-automatic 22.
As hunting is concerned, semi-automatic weapons take everything out of hunting. The hunt was basically made to hunt down the animal, and the kill is should be the most challenging part. And when you have a semi-automatic weapon, pulling the trigger is nothing. You just pull the trigger and you've shot the animal. With a semi-automatic weapons should be outlawed as for sale to citizens.
But it's a hobby like anybody else's hobby. I mean, people have hobbies like they use dynamite to blow art, abstract art and stuff like that. I mean, people are going to have hobbies. It's one of them things.
We cannot afford as a society to continue with the road we're going. We can't afford it hospital-wise. A trauma cost is right around $17,000. So any trauma that comes in the door here, it's going to run, before he gets out of here, in 8 days of stay, is going to run about $17,000. Most of the, and this is not to peg them, but most of the individuals that run around and shoot each other do not have insurance either, nor do they probably have any mechanism of anybody else to pay for them.
Especially my little sister, Amy. She really had a hard time, I think, seeing her brother, in the hospital bed, not doing well at all. A green color with tubes coming in and out of his body and IVs. And all the tears and seeing everybody else react the way they did, it was really hard on her. And my mother, too. She lost a lot of weight too, just from the stress of it all, I think. And that's what was so hard for me, was just physically being in the shape I was, but yet seeing what they were going through and not be able to do anything about it. I couldn't have a big smile on my face and hop out of bed and say, it's all right, which made it all much more worse, I think.
Well, there's so many guns out there that there's no way that even if they went house to house right now, there's no way they could get all the guns back that are out there right now. There's just so many of them that it's ridiculous to even think about even starting doing it.
But I would have to say that it's almost impossible to compare the United States with any other country in the world. There's just no place like this. I don't know when these countries began to eliminate handguns in their respective communities, but it would be a very difficult task to do here in the United States.
Canada does not allow handguns, and so they have not had a death from handguns. They only allow rifles, and that is only with very strict regulation. Sweden is another country that is very preventative, preventative oriented. It's mandatory for their children to wear bicycle helmets. It's mandatory for all ages to be buckled up. They don't care where you are in the car, as well as Australia. It's they don't allow guns in their country, and they don't have an issue with intentional injury.
I can't see the purpose of an automatic weapon being used by a civilian. I can't see that. It's really alarming, and I was a combat infantry soldier in Vietnam, and there are weapons showing up on the street today that I didn't even know anything about, that I didn't have access to. And they're being wielded by 12, 13, 14-year-old kids. That's ridiculous.
You think they should outlaw guns?
Yeah, because it'd be a lot of killing because of guns, stabbing, drugs.
So you think the drugs breeds the guns?
Yeah, because whoever got the drugs, they want to stay safe, so they go buy them a gun. Then somebody try to rob them, they shoot them, then somebody go shoot that person because they shoot their brother, and just go on and go on.
I would like to create a society where there's no need for people to carry concealed weapons, so to speak, okay? So, and I'm not sure that the right to bear arms means that you have the right to carry a concealed weapon.
An armed person is a citizen. When you take away the arms from people, now you only have subjects. You don't have citizens anymore, you got subjects. That's what built this country, was being able to have a gun.
The people in LA were pretty upset when the day after the riots they stood in line to buy firearms and they were told they had to wait a week because they have a waiting period out in LA, and so they were denied the right to protect themselves. Pretty sad.
They might as well lock you up in prison. They're going to tell you what else you can do too. They'll tell you that, well, geez, you can't fart, or you can't go to the bathroom now, You're going to be a slave. If they take away your gun, you will be a slave.
I still have to go back to rights and privilege. We get that all mixed up of what is a right to us. We feel that a driver's license is a right to us, and it really isn't. It is a privilege that we earn, and we have to keep it and continue with that. Actually holding a job, we feel that we have a right to jobs, and they're really not a right either. And so owning a handgun may be a person's privilege, but it is not a societal right. It is something that if you abuse, needs to be gone.
I would be completely in support of a 5-day waiting period or longer, and I think that federal background checks should be done. I think that it should be a national system as opposed to a state-by-state system, and I don't see that there's no legitimate argument to oppose a waiting period, especially for a handgun.
I think that's a pretty good law. I think they should have that should be in effect all over, because it gives them a little time to check the background. I mean, so somebody doesn't. Okay, they get upset about something, they can just go out and buy it. It's like a spur of the moment thing where they're gonna go and react negatively to something that's happened to them. They won't just react off the handle. They can have time to cool down about something. They won't react negatively about it. They won't have that anger still in them. They have time to cool down a bit.
Basically have a background check during that 7-day waiting period to find out whether or not the person is on parole, has a criminal record, has an extensive history of using weapons, or whether or not this person is mentally stable. Nobody should be able to argue with those kinds of justifications for a 7-day waiting period.
I think people who are against like the 7-day waiting period and stuff, if you need a gun tomorrow, you have a problem.
I've had friends ask me if they should buy a handgun for protection, and have you ever used one? Have you ever held one? I mean, most people are actually afraid of them. Well, no, for you, I would not suggest anything of the sort, unless you're willing to go to a professional and get trained.
We just had a 13-year-old die because the 12-year-old was playing with a gun that was laying around the house, and it was loaded and shot her in the stomach. She actually right through the chest, and she was pretty much dead instantly. That's inexcusable. We have a society that is sloppy, and so that sort of thing, maybe some control of regulating the sale of them will help.
They're going to have to do it, though. I guess it's no getting around it. They're going to have to make people realize that if they're going to own firearms, that if they let it get in younger hands, that they're going to have to pay for it in one way or another. It'd be pretty bad to lose your kid, I guess.
If you're taking the elderly, usually the elderly will commit suicide point blank, which is a point blank range is pretty devastating. The skull explodes from the inside out, and so the bullet will make a path and then it'll spread, and by the time it leaves the other side of the skull, it's got a hole about like this. So it's pretty significant and instant death. But most of the time to the face, unfortunately, all they'll do is take out their face, and so they will split this part in the palate, the nose, and through the forehead and never touch the brain.
I placed the barrel of the shotgun under my chin, and I reached down with my thumb on the trigger, and I remember my last thought was, Lord, forgive me for what I'm about to do, and I pulled the trigger.
The first issue would be responsibility, since handguns are legal, to have, I don't know, maybe workshops for people who buy handguns, and to train parents, if there are children in the homes, to keep them locked and away from kids, to keep them unloaded at all times. And secondly, I think that to change society's attitude as a whole about the machismo, the attitude about it's better to be armed and ready for any sort of violent action that's going to happen to you, as opposed to being more positively oriented and more pacifist oriented, saying, you know, negative things aren't going to happen, and if they are, maybe I can handle them non-violently, and I can definitely handle them without a deadly weapon.
If you got a gun and you walking up and down the street with it, you have that intention that as soon as something goes wrong, you're going to use that gun.
If we did get rid of them, what do you think will happen?
I think this world will be a whole lot better.
Okay.
Violence will be subsided, and community probably bring people more close together. That's our problem. We're so doggone far apart. People just don't act right, you know what I mean?
If we can remove guns from most people in terms of the way that we're going to solve problems, or as the backup for solving problems, then I think we're going to create less deaths in our society overall. It's going to be harder to do to start with, but I think we'll create less deaths.
In November 1993, the U.S. Congress passed the Brady Bill. Its provisions include a 5-day waiting period to buy a handgun, a background check during the waiting period, implementation of a national computerized background checking system, and in 4 years the waiting period would be dropped.
What do you find morally wrong with guns?
They destroy another human being. Probably, if you really wanted to get into the point of that they represent destruction, period.
A weapon that that can cause instant destruction and whose primary purpose is to maim or to destroy, we don't require any kind of requirements on the part of those persons to demonstrate the ability to use it properly or safely.
How's it feel? You got a lot of power in your hands.
Yeah,